When the regular season ends, it's funny because the playbook, it doesn't actually change. The dimensions of the field stay exactly the same.
Right, the ball is still the exact same shape.
Exactly. But the moment the postseason begins, the physics of the sport just seem to, well, they completely work. Everything just gets heavier.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a totally different game being played on the exact same field.
Yeah. And that transition, moving from the calculated, almost mathematical safety of the regular season right into the absolute furnace of the playoffs. That is what we are diving into today.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are looking at a truly captivating stretch of tape from the source material. The Aquatova Football Association, or AFA, Season 6 playoffs. Our mission for this deep dive is to basically figure out how established hierarchies get completely dismantled when the pressure is just turned up to the absolute maximum. Because, a team's identity on paper rarely survives first contact with playoff desperation, right? By the time winter arrived in the AFA, we were down to just 4 teams. And what stands out immediately in the tape isn't really the physical toll, but the psychological one. The sources describe these remaining teams as carrying 4 distinct burdens, I guess you'd call them.
Right, the burdens of expectation.
Yeah.
Let's look at the board here. You've got the number 1 seed, the Mount Cristo Invaders. They are the unquestioned favorites.
Heavy favorites.
Yeah, they dominated the regular season, which means they are carrying the incredibly heavy burden of expectation. Like anything less than a championship isn't just a loss for them, it's a catastrophic failure.
Yeah, the pressure there is immense. Then there is the number 2 seed, right? The Centralia Hawks. Their burden is this profound, almost stubborn confidence in their own grit.
They just love the mud, don't they?
Oh, they thrive in it. They're built to grind you down. They don't want to blow you out. They want to drag you into deep water and basically just out-survive you in these really close games.
Which brings us to the number 3 seed, the Lokoya Tribe. They are definitely the wild card in this ecosystem. They carry this quiet, sort of simmering belief that they haven't even peaked yet.
Right, which makes them incredibly dangerous.
Exactly. They are a dangerous challenger because they don't feel that crushing pressure of perfection. And rounding it out, the number 4 seed, the Olaport Pilots, carrying the ultimate desperate hope of the underdog. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the regular season, it established a very neat, tidy hierarchy.
It looked great on paper.
Totally. It's like a corporate resume,
Yeah.
It looks amazing on paper, Mount Cristo at the top, Olaport at the bottom. But the playoffs are the actual high-pressure job interview where those paper credentials mean absolutely nothing. What we're about to see is that playoff football is not about playing perfectly.
No, not at all. What's fascinating here is that perfection is just a myth in the postseason. The overarching theme of these playoffs is entirely about chaos management.
Chaos management, I like that.
Yeah, when the initial game plan shatters, and it always does, which team panics and which team adapts.
And we see that dynamic immediately, right? It is the defining story of the first semifinal, which was the Lokoya Tribe against the Centralia Hawks. Going into this, you kind of expect a clash of titans.
You'd think so.
But it wasn't a showcase of pristine execution at all. It was a brutal, ugly, just exhausting test of endurance.
If you hand a stat sheet from this game to any football analyst, their head would absolutely spin. Centralia actually executed their schematic game plan almost flawlessly.
On paper, anyway.
Right. They wanted to shrink the game, control the clock, and dictate the tempo, and they did. They held possession for over 14 minutes and meticulously generated 14 first downs.
And Lokoya couldn't do anything on the ground to counter it. Their ground game was completely neutralized. They managed, 32 rushing yards for the entire game?
Yep, just 32. And Centralia barely did better with 34. This was a literal trench war in the mud.
So Lokoya was forced to become completely one-dimensional. They had to rely entirely on the air, and it was really messy.
Oh, totally messy. Centralia's defense did exactly what a number 2 seed is designed to do. They forced 4 Lokoya turnovers.
Okay, wait, I have to jump in here. If Centralia holds the ball longer, right, they get more first downs, and they force 4 turnovers. Shouldn't they automatically win? It feels like a math equation that just doesn't add up. If you tell me those stats before the game, I am betting my mortgage on Centralia.
Oh, absolutely.
Lokoya winning this just feels like a mathematical glitch.
Well, it feels like a glitch if you only look at volume rather than location. Possession time and first downs between the 20-yard lines are just empty calories if you can't capitalize.
Empty calories. That makes sense.
Yeah, because the turning point of this game is entirely about red zone geometry. Centralia repeatedly moved the ball down the field. They crossed into the red zone 4 separate times. But when the field vertically compressed, Centralia's methodical, short-yardage offense just suffocated.
Because there's no space to operate anymore. The linebackers don't have to respect the deep threat, so they just crowd the line.
Exactly. Lakoya's defense realized they just had to clamp down on the shallow crossers and those underneath routes. So instead of surrendering 4 touchdowns from those 4 methodical drives, Latoya's defense just dug their cleats in. They forced Centralia to settle for 2 field goals.
That has to be so demoralizing.
Oh, it is. Centralia's only touchdown was this agonizing, grinding 1-yard pass to Arrington that took just maximum effort just to cross the plane.
So Centralia is burning immense amounts of physical and mental energy just to get 3 points or to scrape out a single yard at the goal line. And how does Lakoya respond? By bypassing the mud completely.
Right. Lakoya's veteran quarterback, Charlie Batch, he understood he couldn't win a war of attrition. I mean, he threw 2 interceptions in this game, which speaks to how aggressive he was being.
He was forcing it a bit.
He was, but he also threw for 231 yards on 16 completions. He was constantly probing for a structural weakness. And then, well, he found it.
The 50-yard bomb to Edwards?
Yes.
It was the antithesis of everything Centralia was trying to do. Centralia is fighting for inches in the trenches, and Bash just drops back and launches a massive 50-yard touchdown pass. It was just this huge capitalization on sudden space.
And that one single strike completely shattered Centralia's math. Centralia played the percentages, right? They had more first downs, more time of possession. They forced 4 turnovers. But Lakoya understood that one explosive play is worth an entire quarter of grinding possession.
So Lakoya wins it 16-13. And what is so compelling about that takeaway for you, the listener, is that Lakoya didn't win by being flawless. They survived their own mistakes.
It really did.
They threw interceptions, they fumbled, they had practically 0 run game, but they turned those 4 turnovers into a masterclass in defensive resistance. They endured the chaos.
They embraced it, really. Now, contrast that gritty survival with what happened on the other side of the bracket. Lakoya proved you could survive chaos. But Montcristo's semifinal against Olaport was entirely about ensuring chaos never had a chance to breathe.
Right, the number 1 seed versus the number 4 seed. Everyone loves an underdog story, and for about 15 minutes of game time, it looked like we might actually get one.
Yeah, Olaport actually engineered a drive that culminated in a 23-yard field goal in the first quarter. They struck first. The number 4 seed essentially punched the preseason favorite in the mouth, which gave their fans this genuine glimmer of hope.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The Montcristo sideline didn't panic at all. They didn't scrap their game plan. They just leaned into their identity, which was spearheaded by their aging linebacker legend, Ray Lewis.
Oh, Ray Lewis.
I mean, here's a guy whose mere presence on the field alters the blocking assignments of the entire offensive line.
He was the absolute anchor for a defensive masterclass.
Yeah.
Look, we just talked about Lakoya struggling to run the ball with 32 yards, right? Montcristo held Olaport to -3 rushing yards. -3.
Wait, -3 for the whole game.
For the entire game.
I want to focus on that for a second, because holding a professional football team to negative rushing yards isn't just about good tackling. It means you're diagnosing the snap, shooting the gaps, and blowing up the play in the backfield before the running back even has time to read his blocks. It's a complete and utter demolition of the offensive line.
It is absolute line of scrimmage dominance, and it sets off this chain reaction. When you completely erase the run game, you force the opposing quarterback into a highly predictable, incredibly dangerous position.
Right. I've always thought of the Montcristo defense like a boa constrictor.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, because a boa doesn't strike and kill its prey instantly. It wraps around you, and every time you exhale, it just tightens. It systematically takes away your options. By pushing the run game into negative yardage, Montcristo took away the play-action pass. They took away the quick screens. They squeezed the playbook down to absolutely nothing, which forced Olaport's quarterback, Tony Banks, into a state of sheer panic.
Right. Banks was put in a position where he had to drop back into true passing sets on almost every down just to keep his offense on the field. The Montcristo secondary knew the ball was coming out, and they just jumped the routes. Banks managed to throw for 203 yards, but the resulting chaos was catastrophic for Olaport.
Let me guess, interceptions.
He threw 4 of them.
Oof. 4 interceptions from your quarterback is just a death sentence in the playoffs.
It really is. Montcristo outgained Olaport 267 to 195 in total yards, but the yardage is almost irrelevant. The defining metric of the semifinal is the turnover differential. You had 5 total turnovers for Olaport compared to just one single mistake for Mount Cristo.
Wow, 5-1.
Yeah, and it wasn't a sudden, flashy blowout either. It was a methodical suffocation. Mount Cristo scored 13 points in the second quarter, completely shutting down that early Olaport momentum. They added 10 more in the third, and then basically just coasted with a final field goal in the fourth for a 26-6 victory.
Like the boa constrictor slowly digesting its meal. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Mount Cristo did exactly what a number 1 seed is built to do. They absorbed the initial shock of that first quarter field goal, neutralized the underdog's momentum, and turned chaos into cold, clinical certainty.
Which brings us to the ultimate collision course, right? The AFA Season 6 Championship.
The big one.
You have Mount Cristo, the unstoppable force, heavily burdened by the expectation that they are the unquestioned kings of the league, coming off a suffocating defensive win.
And on the other sideline, the unkillable survivor, Lakoya. A team that just proved they can win ugly, carrying this massive, dangerous wave of momentum. It's the classic matchup. The team with the flawless pedigree versus the team that simply refuses to die.
And the early game reflected that tension beautifully. It was a real heavyweight prize fight. Neither team was willing to give an inch early on.
Yeah, Lakoya draws first blood. They hit an Emmanuel field goal to go up 3-0. Mount Cristo shakes it off, marches down the field, and answers to tie it up. But right before the half, Lakoya's Charlie Batch strikes again.
He finds a window?
Yep. He connects with Des White for a touchdown, and Lakoya takes a 10-3 lead into the locker room.
And you can feel the pressure mounting on Mount Cristo at this point. They are the number 1 seed. They are not supposed to be trailing at halftime. The third quarter is where their quarterback, Charlie Elway, realizes he basically has to put the entire franchise on his shoulders.
He starts scrambling, right?
Yeah, he starts using his legs to buy time, extending plays, throwing on the run. He is just generating offense out of sheer willpower.
He drives them all the way down the field, culminating in a rushing touchdown by Travis Minor. Suddenly, it's tied up, 17-10 heading into the fourth quarter. It feels like the stage is set for a down-to-the-wire final possession championship classic. But then, well, Lakoya's Des White completely takes over the game.
Des White was the ultimate structural mismatch in this championship. I mean, he finished with 5 catches for 139 yards.
Wait, averaging over 27 yards per catch?
Yep, with a 67-yard long.
That kind of production isn't just moving the chains. That is fundamentally breaking the opposing defense's architecture. Every time Mount Cristo grinded their way back into the game, White would just blow the roof off their coverage and flip the field in one single play.
Because Mount Cristo's boa constrictor defense relies on compression, you know. They want to squeeze you into small windows. But they couldn't squeeze an offense that was suddenly moving in 30-yard chunks. White stretched the field vertically, which forced the Mount Cristo safeties to play deeper. And that, in turn, opened up everything else for Lakoya underneath.
So what does this all mean? I really need to stop and look at the actual mechanics of this game here, because there is a glaring statistical anomaly in the source material that we have to talk about. Both of these teams committed exactly 4 turnovers in the championship.
It's true.
4 for Lakoya, 4 for Mount Cristo. In fact, Charlie Batch threw 3 interceptions himself. If they both turned the ball over 4 times, how on earth did Lakoya end up winning by 17 points? How does a game with equal mistakes result in a 27-10 blowout?
See, that is the most fascinating question of this entire postseason. Because the box score implies an evenly matched game full of errors, but turnovers are not created equal. The mechanical difference in this game was how the respective defensive units responded when their offense gave the ball away.
Right, because when Mount Cristo's the team burdened by the expectation of absolute perfection turned the ball over, you could see the structural panic. The pressure just compounded for them.
Exactly. When Mount Cristo made a mistake, their defense came back onto the field carrying the massive weight of that error. They played tight, they played scared almost. But when Lakoya made a mistake, they had already survived an ugly, turnover-filled mud wrestling match against Centralia.
They were used to it.
Yeah. They knew they weren't perfect. Their superpower throughout the playoffs wasn't avoiding mistakes, it was their schematic response to them.
How did that response actually look on the field, though? Like structurally?
Instead of playing this conservative, bend-but-don't-break defense after a turnover, the Lakoya defense went on the attack. They turned to steal. They brought different pressure packages, they confused Elway's pre-snap reads, and they forced Mount Cristo into quick 3-and-outs right after a change of possession. They simply didn't let the Mount Cristo offense capitalize on the sudden change in field position.
That resilience completely broke Mount Cristo in the fourth quarter. The Lokoya defense held the #1 seed scoreless in the final period. Meanwhile, the Lokoya offense didn't go into a shell after their own turnovers. They kept throwing, and they tacked on 10 unanswered points. The lead swells from 7 to 10 to 17.
The disparity in total output by the final whistle is just staggering, especially considering Mount Cristo was the heavy favorite. The Lokoya defense suffocated them. Mount Cristo was held to just 171 total yards for the entire championship.
Wow, 171 yards.
Yeah, 49 yards on the ground, 122 through the air. The team that dominated the league for an entire season managed a dismal 9 first downs when it mattered most.
While Lokoya is on the other side amassing 290 total yards, with Batch throwing for 264 despite the interceptions, it was an absolute dismantling. Not because Lokoya played a pristine, mistake-free game, but because they were relentlessly resilient in the face of their own errors.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from these AFA Season 6 playoffs. Look at the path Lokoya had to walk. They beat the #2 seed by 3 points in a game where their run game was completely eradicated. They relied on timely deep shots and incredible red zone defense. Then they pivot and completely conquer the #1 preseason favorite by 17 points in a game where the turnover margin was dead even.
The championship didn't go to the team that looked best on paper, or even the team with the best regular season statistics. It went to the team that was still climbing, still adapting, when the environment became completely hostile. Lokoya proved that you can survive the tactical mud of a semifinal, and you can conquer a dominant favorite, simply by refusing to let a mistake dictate the next sequence of plays.
This raises an important question about operating in high-stakes environments, doesn't it? Being the top seed brings a massive psychological burden. You are expected to execute flawlessly, and when you don't, the whole structure often collapses. But carrying momentum, carrying that quiet, tested confidence that you can survive your own worst mistakes and still dictate the terms of the game, that is a far more dangerous weapon than a perfect regular season record.
It's the difference between fragile perfection and anti-fragile resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at Lokoya's incredible journey, they proved unequivocally that perfection is an illusion. But resilience is a strategy. If a football team can win a championship despite constant turnovers simply by having a better bounce-back reflex, well, where else in your own life might being adaptable and resilient be infinitely more valuable than trying to be flawless?
It really challenges the very metric of how we measure preparedness,
It absolutely does. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the AFA Season 6 playoffs. Keep questioning the stats, keep embracing the messy reality of the game, and keep exploring. We'll catch you next time.